Welcome back to my channel, Conspiracy and Crime. I appreciate all you conspirators clicking on this video. Today, I'm going to jump right into it. However, I do want to let you know that I'm going to focus a little bit more on mental health versus the conspiracy itself, so please stay tuned for that. Today, I am focused on Chester Bennington, one of the all-time great frontmen. He was the frontman for Linkin Park, and he also did some work solo and also helped out the Stone Temple Pilots. Chester had a very long, illustrious career. He was a devoted family man and an advocate for mental health. So, let's start with the conspiracies. The conspiracy starts back even before Chester had passed away. It has been stated that Chris Cornell, who was a very close friend to Chester actually sang at his funeral, Anthony Bourdain, and Avicii were all killed because of a documentary that they were doing. The documentary was The Silent Children, which was outlining sex trafficking of children. Now, Reuters came back and said that these four men were never associated with the documentary and that the folks that are making the documentary had no knowledge of any of their involvement. However, there's a lot of people out there that still believe that this is the case. For me, I don't think that it is, and here is why. Chester was widely known for someone who was an advocate for mental health. He was also one of the first big stars that spent a lot of time talking about it. If you go back and look at it as a couple of his interviews, and I will post the links in the bottom, you will hear him talk about his struggles of mental health and how specific he gets into it. His most recent video before he had passed, he spent just about 6 minutes talking about what it was like living a day in the life of Chester, where at one moment he could be happy, especially when he was surrounded by his friends, his family, and even his fans, but that could change in an instant when he was by himself. When he was by himself, and I quote, "It is dangerous for me to be in my own head. It is not a safe place," unquote, was something that Chester really could articulate well, especially to folks that suffer with depression and anxiety. You put one of his closest friends, Chris Cornell, who had also passed away via suicide just a year prior, and that was one of his closest friends, like I said, and he went to the funeral. He sang at the funeral. It was something that I don't know if he ever got over, and if you hear him in interviews, it really hit close to home for him. Now, some people will say the video of him and his family just a few short hours before they found him passed was him being happy, joyful, laughing, and really in the moment. And I analyzed that, and I wanted to believe for so long that that's where Chester was at in his life. He was happy, he was content, and he just was living his best life, right? But when you hear about the story, Chester had actually left shortly after that video to go to California, where he was by himself, essentially. And we know that Chester has stated that when he gets by himself, it's not a safe place for him to be in his own head. So who knows what he was thinking about, and who knows what happened that night? But we know that it was definitely a situation that he had spoken about before, and it was just a bad spot for him to be. So for all my Chester fans out there, obviously, when news broke of what happened with Chester, that was a very sad day. And all the way until today, I was a huge fan. I should say I am a huge fan. And it was something that was definitely fairly emotional, especially for the timing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about mental health. And I know this goes away from the conspiracy and crime portion of it. I think what Chester was trying to articulate was that for folks that suffer with mental health, depression, and anxiety, sometimes it's not as easy as, hey, I'm just going to fix it, or going to take a drug, or, even see a doctor, a psychiatrist, or whatever the case might be. I think Chester was very well aware of what made him tick, what would set him off. I think that naturally in that state of mind, he was an overthinker, which generally leads you to be a perfectionist. And a lot of times it's because you're wired that way. You get obsessed with something and you just can't quit thinking about it, right? And I am a very bad overthinker, so I understand that. The minute details might get my attention for a couple of hours, might get my attention for a couple of days, even a couple of weeks or longer. And then you become obsessive of things that may not seem to matter to a lot of people, but to an overthinker, it's something that needs to either be fixed or be perfected, or in order for you to move on, just needs to be completed. Now, the problem that comes in is when you do that, then there's always the next task or always the next thing to really become obsessive about. And this within itself can lead to an evil cycle of anxiety, anxiety leading to depression, depression leading to overthinking, overthinking leading to lack of sleep, lack of happiness. And you really look for new ways to kind of take your mind off of it, right? So you can enjoy the moment. I also notice overthinkers live in the past a lot. They will be constantly thinking about the future, so everything seems like it's the past and it's never really in the moment. And I think all of that stuff was articulated through some of the interviews that Chester had given. Again, those links are down below. And I think that if there's anything that anybody can ever do to try to understand what anxiety and depression really looks like, give that video a 6-minute look, right? I think the best line that I had ever seen was actually posted on his video, One More Light, was the man saved 1 million people, but 1 million people couldn't save that man. And that is really the reality of the situation. So I'm going to leave you with this. If for any reason you are suffering from depression or anxiety or even overthinking, first thing I'll say is give yourself a little bit of grace. I'm not a doctor. I am not a scientist. And I don't make any recommendations for people. What I would recommend is seek some help. That always does help. At the very least, seek somebody that you can speak with or talk to, because that can help. But continue on in your journey looking for ways to minimize the times that you're going through depression, anxiety, or even overthinking, and that can make things a lot more joyful. So, that being said, I appreciate your time today, conspirators. Again, Chester is one of my heroes. I really, really enjoy his music. I still listen to it today, and it was definitely a sad day when he had passed, but I think his music's going to continue to live on. And I appreciate all you folks clicking on this video. Again, if you could, give me a subscribe, trying to grow the channel right now, and also leave some comments. For that, I will leave you with this. Have a wonderful weekend, conspirators, and until next time.